Hello, how are you? Unusually, it's a bright sunny day here in London, so I thought it'd be fun to do a book tag video, which is a tag video that I enjoy doing every year. That is the end of the year book tag, because it's a good way, I think, to sort of assess where I am in my reading for the year and what I want to read before the end of the year. I mean, obviously, I don't need to read all these books, but there's lots of books that I always want to get to, and I don't know why we set these sort of pressure on ourselves that we have to finish it before the end of the year. But I constantly feel this pressure every year. But anyway, I think these questions are helpful in sort of laying that out. And I've found it slightly challenging in the second half of this year to read a lot more of the books that I want to get to, since I've been a judge on the Costa Book Awards, and I've been reading lots and lots of novels for that, many of which I haven't been able to discuss publicly yet. But there's going to be an announcement towards the end of November of the shortlist for the first novel category, and I can't wait to talk about that and share that and discuss it with all of you, because there's some really exciting novels on that list. But yeah, there are other books that I want to get to as well. So I'll go through the questions. The very first question is, are there any books you started this year that you need to finish? And yes, there are lots and lots of books that I need to get to and finish. Like for Victober, I was reading The Old Curiosity Shop by Charles Dickens, and I still need to finish that. There was like a period in the middle of it. It's quite a long novel, obviously it's Dickens, and that I felt there was sort of a lull and I was less engaged with it. But then it got to a section where I got really more engaged, where the character, the grandfather, became more complex, because he's basically a gambling addict, and so the situation between him and his granddaughter becomes very strained, and yeah, so that added this new level of tension to the novel that I wanted to get to and made me want to finish it. There is also a few different novels that I sort of started, but I just didn't get around to finishing, for whatever reason. It's not that I wasn't enjoying them so much, but I guess there was, yeah, with Dickens, there was a slight lull in the story, and so I allowed myself to start another book, and then I just didn't go back to it. That how that can happen quite often. So there's a novel called Bad Love by Maame Blue, which I was sort of enjoying, but I didn't feel like it was the story wasn't so urgent or so original that I was so really that I really wanted to finish it. But it is an interesting novel, and so I would like to get to the end to sort of see how it all plays out. Then there is a novel called Helen and the Grandbees by Alex Morrall that I was really enjoying. Is a really different kind of story again, but also I was slightly unsure about how some of the plot was being handled, and so I just sort of got distracted from it. But it is one that I would like to see how it ends and how it plays out. And it was sort of the same case with Nightingale by Marina Kemp, which again I was quite enjoying, but was just sort of it was very gentle and sort of going along at a slow pace, and so I didn't feel that urgent need to sort of find out what was going to happen next. Especially there's also, as I've been talking about, I've been wanting to get into reading more science fiction, and I started reading Dune, which again I was really enjoying, but I got quite confused about some of the aspects of the plot, and this sort of alternate world that it builds up, and all of the rules and of the society, and it's quite intricate, and it takes a while to sort of wrap your head around it. And at the time that I was reading it, I just felt like I can't give the attention to this that it entirely needs. So I'd probably have to go back and restart this to feel like to get the real flavor of the story and understand better some of the early scenes that I didn't quite fully get, though like sort of with reading like Hilary Mantel or something, I feel like I just need to plunge myself into it and go along with it, and then I'll eventually learn more about it. And because it's a classic novel, it's one I could probably go back to and reread at some point, and I'll probably get more out of on the second time. And then there's also the book Exhalation Translation by Ted Chiang, which is brilliant. I think it's really amazing what he does in these stories, sort of probing these philosophical questions in stories which are kind of like fairy tale stories or like mythic type stories. That I think it's so interesting, but because they're short stories or some of them are almost novella length, that I feel like you sort of can take your time with them more. But I've read like about a half of the stories, but I want to go back and finally finish it. So there's a lot to be getting on with, and it makes me slightly panic a bit that there's all these books that I want to finish that I'd started before the end of the year. But I just won't stress myself out too much about it. So the next question is, do you have an autumnal book to transition into the end of the year? And I do have a really good book, I think, for that, which is a slender book. It's a book of poetry by Sean Hewitt called Tons of Fire. That sounds like made it sound like tons, Tons, but it's tons, like ton in your mouth. I probably don't need to explain that because you can see. Anyway, this looks like a lovely autumnal book because, I mean, the cover gives that sort of impression, but also a lot of the poems deal with nature, and I'm just sort of noticing nature a lot more since all the leaves are changing. But also, I think some of the poems deal almost like directly with the transitions of the seasons. Like one is called October. There's poems about the moors. There's a poem called December as well, and so yeah, it's sort of the latter half of the year, I think, that some of these poems deal with. And this author was just shortlisted for the Young Writer of the Year award, which is a fun award I like following every year. And also, this is his first like proper collection of poetry, but I have read one of his pamphlets before. I think it was called Lamplight, that I really enjoyed. And he's a young Irish writer that I'd like to read more of. Question 3 is there a new release you're still waiting for? And I'm going to give a sort of tricksy answer to this because I do have a copy of it, and that is Luster by Raven Leilani, which is a novel a lot of people have been talking about because it was published, I think, a couple months ago in the States. And it's been much talked about novel, but it's not being published here in the UK until January, but I was kindly sent this advance copy of it, but I'm really looking forward to reading it. It's about a young woman who's not really sure what she wants to do in her life. Her job working in admin isn't going all that well, and she has lots of different affairs with men that don't really work out, and then she meets a man who named Eric, not me Eric, but who is a white man who has a family and a sort of open relationship, and how the main character gets involved with him and his family and how that sort of plays out. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading this finally after hearing all the talk about it. Question 4 is, what are 3 books you want to read before the end of the year? And so 3 I want to get to is, one is the Booker shortlisted novel, The New Wilderness by Diane Cook, which I've been wanting to read ever since it was first published. But it sounds very good, and I've heard such mixed things about it that I really want to know what I'm gonna think about it. Because I've not all of the books on the Booker Prize shortlist have been a hit with me. So yeah, I want to read this obviously before the winner announcement is made in the next couple of weeks. So that is coming up soon. Then I have a sort of guilty admission to make. A year ago I made a video with Anna where we were discussing some books that we wanted to recommend to each other. And recently, Anna and I admitted to each other that we've not read any of the suggestions that we made to each other. They're still just sitting there on our bookshelves and that we've been wanting to get to. But one book that she suggested to me that I've been really wanting to read is this book of essays called Upstream by Mary Oliver. And yeah, it just sounds so good. And obviously, I really trust Anna's taste. And also the kind of cover of it kind of looks autumnal or like towards the end of the year. So it sort of goes with the season. So I want to sort of be able to go back to Anna and say that I finally read this book that she let me borrow and I can finally return this to her. And then I want to read more by Anthony Trollope. And from, I'm reading this series of his 6 novels. So I'm currently reading Barchester Towers now. And I want to get to the next novel in that series, which is called Dr. Thorne, and that I've heard really great things about as well. And yeah, I just have been enjoying his writing so much and discovering this great classic author that yeah, I want to read more of his work. So yeah, I'm hoping to read the 3rd book in that series before the end of the year, even though I know I don't need to rush it, because there's obviously no urgency since he's a classic author. He's always been there. But yeah, I've just been enjoying it so much that I'd like to make more steady progress on this series rather than, leaving it off and sort of meaning to go back to it and then not going back to it because I get so caught up in new fiction. Question 5 is there a book you think could shock you and become your favorite book of the year? And I think the novel that might be able to do that for me is Morrall by Alex Feby. And I think that for a few reasons. It's a sort of literary gothic fantasy novel. And since it was published a few months ago, I've been hearing really great things about it from readers I trust and, that I follow on social media. And yeah, it just sort of sounds like kind of my vibe at the moment of a kind of story I would really enjoy. But also, it's published by Galley Beggar Press that also published Ducks Newburyport last year in the UK. And so I really trust their taste in literature. They don't publish that many books. And so, yeah, I think this could come out as my favorite book of the year. And the final question, question 6, is have you already started making reading plans for 2021? And I have already, because some publishers have been sending me some of their books that are coming out early next year, and I've been getting really excited about them. And one of the ones that I'm massively excited about is the debut novel by Danielle McLaughlin called The Art of Falling. And I made a video recently talking about some of my favorite fiction from the past 20 years, and her book of short stories, Dinosaurs on Other Planets, was one of those. And I just love her as an author. And I think her writing is so extraordinary. And so, yeah, obviously highly, highly anticipating this, her first novel. And so excited about it. Then there is George Saunders' book, A Swim in a Pond in the Rain, which is a wonderful title. And this is a nonfiction book where he's reflecting on great works of classic literature, especially by Russian authors, I think like Chekhov and Tolstoy and Gogol. And yeah, I'm really interested to see his reflections on literature and sort of the form of writing, because obviously the form of his writing is so out there and really tricksy and fun. And so I think he'll have such an interesting perspective on great classic literature. And so, yeah, really looking forward to reading this. And I've been wanting to read more by George Saunders since I was a huge fan of Lincoln in the Bardo. So yeah, very, very excited to read these books in particular. So yeah, already making new plans. So those are my answers to the questions. I'd love to know your answers as well. If you want to make a video or if you just want to answer in the comments below, I'll put the questions in the description under the title if you just click show more, and then you can see them. And yeah, I'd be really keen to know about your reading plans for the end of the year, and if there are any books that you need to go back to and finish, and or that you aspire to finish before the end of the year, and all of that good stuff. So let's have a chat in the comments below, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye.